Hello, everybody. Welcome to the PixelPlay Podcast, episode number 177. That's right, I actually paid attention to what episode it was before I recorded this. As always, Adam, aka CS Radical, although not as always, although sometimes it feels like it these days with how at least one person's always away. Me flying solo, Chris still on vacation, Kaylan unable to make it. He is not feeling too hot. Apparently something's been really going around. Like, I mentioned, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, but I had like some sort of, I think it might have been walking pneumonia, but not sure. I never got properly diagnosed, but he's dealing with something real rough right now. I got friends that are also dealing with some crazy stuff too. Like, it just seems like there's a lot going around here in old Canada land this winter. So a lot of people are just going through the muck of it, but you are stuck with me. Speaking of the muck of it, you're stuck with this guy for probably 45 minutes to an hour tops. This will definitely be a shorter show than usual. Obviously, I say that. Sometimes that never is the case because I do tend to ramble, but we are going to be talking about mostly the developer direct that Xbox recently did and all the games that came with that. But as always, don't forget, if you are watching on YouTube, like and subscribe. If you are watching on any audio platforms, give us that old like, give us the 5 stars, share with all your friends, all that smooth jazz. And don't forget about our link tree, linktr.ee/pixelplay podcast, where you can see where we are at in all terms of social media, where you can get the podcast and link to our Discord. Come and hang out with us. We're always talking shop in there. But alas, it is 2025 still. God forbid this year takes even longer the rate that it's going. I thought 2024 was going to be the kind of month where, or the kind of year where I was going to be, okay, good, it's finally over. And now here I am being like, great, can January fucking end? And God only knows what February is going to be like. But hey, at least it's my birthday. I'll get some free shit out of it. So at least I'll get something next month. But, it's finally at a point in 2025 where I can talk about games that I actually played in the same goddamn year because we finally caught up, at least on my side. So I'm going to talk about what, at this point, and it's the first game I finished this year, is probably going to be my Jen and Chris Classic for 2024. Because I have not actually played any... have I started any games that have been released this year yet? I don't think so. I don't think I've even tried something that came out this year yet. So everything that I've finished so far is still 2024 releases. And this is definitely going to be a Jen and Chris Classic nominee. It's very much like how American Arcadia was basically running the show the entirety of 2024 when it came to came to 2023 and further back releases. For those who don't know, the Jen and Chris Classic is an award that we do at the end of every year, which is a nod to the fact that Chris has an insurmountable backlog. So the Jen and Chris Classic is meant to be an award that we give to a game that was not released in 2025, or I guess the current year, whatever it may be. The best game that we played that was released in any year other than the current year that we are doing our awards for. So anything from December 31st, 2024 back gets counted to this award. And Unicorn Overlord is my current runner for that. Now, it would not have probably even broken the top 3 for my actual games that I played in 2024. It might be... I'm pretty sure at this point it's top 5. It probably lands at 4 or 5. It really just depends on where I want to put Helldivers. But at this point, I don't even know. Because, the thing that I did with my list is until then... oh my god, what was my number 2? Am I already blanking? Because I know the Holy Gosh Darn was another one. What was my... I already forgot what the hell my awards were. I think I still have the document up somewhere. What was it? Oh, Metaphor. Duh. Wow, brain. Good job. Good job, me. Those 3 games I think I would still put above them. Unicorn Overlord is not as good a JRPG as Metaphor. Unicorn Overlord didn't make me laugh my ass off like the Holy Gosh Darn did, and Unicorn Overlord didn't make me cry my goddamn soul out like Until Then did. So it's definitely up there, but not quite. And I played a lot of stuff. That's the other thing. 2024 was an insane year for high quality stuff that I played. But I will say, I wanted to play this game sooner, and I just had to really bide my time until there was a good deal on it, because I'm not a full price guy anymore these days. I budget really, really hard, so it's difficult for me to find any reason to buy a game at the very most right off the bat. So it's not something that I do too often. In Unicorn Overlord, I did play the demo before it was released, and I really, really liked it because it gave me similar vibes to what I liked about Fire Emblem, but kind of expanded upon a little bit. And even to prove that point, I recently tried again for the second time to play Fire Emblem Engage, and again, it just didn't click. And part of it, granted, is the character design in that game sucks, at least in the very beginning. The voice acting in that game sucks, at least in the beginning. I'm saying in the beginning repeatedly because it's only as far as I've gotten. And the combat, honestly, just doesn't hit the same way that it used to. It may just be similar to how, like, Pokemon games don't jive the same way with me anymore, even though I love the originals. Like, the last Fire Emblem game that I really put a lot of time into is Awakening. I did put a bunch of time into the first, I think it was Birthright was that like trio of games they put, one of them which was like a downloadable game only, which was weird. But like I tried Three Houses as well, really didn't like that one. I think that one may have more to do with the fact that there's all this extra open world stuff with it, and I didn't necessarily care that much about it. But Unicorn Overlord took the core of what a turn-based strategy JRPG is, and added what I can only describe to be like the Final Fantasy 12 Gambit system to it, and ended up coming up with a system that is way more strategic than I ever could have considered, makes for some incredible fights, is if you let it go. Because by the time I got like halfway through the game, you eventually can only watch so many battles, because it's a long game. Like, we're talking 80 hours. So there's only so many times you can watch battles over and over again with a similar attack. So eventually you start skipping through them. But like the first time you look at, the battle system and how they actually play things out, it's goddamn beautiful. And it looks amazing to go through. And having all of these different characters with all these different classes and abilities that you've got to figure out, okay, when should I trigger this? What should the priority for this be? Like, there are attacks that you can do where you can say, hey, I only want you to use this if the enemy has 50% HP or less. Or I only want you to use this if there's 2 or more people in this row. Because sometimes there are attacks that, work better because they hit multiple enemies. So sometimes you want them to go for a single enemy attack if there's only that many people they can target. So that way, maybe that one applies a status effect, or maybe that one just does more damage. So there's certain things that you can kind of customize to make sure that, like, whenever a battle starts, that your party members are taking the best possible route to getting through the battle as cleanly as possible. And in doing so, it made me constantly cognizant of what I was putting together. I was constantly messing with my party structure. I would say, because you can have, I think the max was 10. It's been like a few weeks, so I'm only remembering so much here. But there came some points where I was, taking my time and going through different units and trying to figure out, okay, do I need to adjust this unit anymore, or do I just need to better augment like their equipment, better mess with their abilities, or do I need to exchange a party member for this one because this class might actually work better to do X? Like, maybe I need some more healing properties. Maybe I need someone that can deal a little more damage. Maybe I need someone that can put a little more defense in and block a couple extra attacks. Stuff like that. And it kept the vast majority of the game up until about the last, like, I'd say 15 to 20%, where I really didn't change nearly as much, and I was just kind of running through what I needed to accomplish my end goal. And in doing so, I ended up getting a game that I could not put down. I got a game that I could not stop messing with. And I got a game that, quite frankly, like I said, it's close to being my game of the year if it wasn't for just such an incredible amount of games. But like, this thing did so many things right and reminded me why I really liked Fire Emblem Awakening as much as I did, and did this by evolving into a system that I don't know if I can go back to with the old tactics games anymore. I don't know if I could play Fire Emblem again. I don't know if I can play, Final Fantasy Tactics under the same umbrella when now I have this as the way that I want battles to go forward from now on. So the major differences, apart from this gambit system that really messes with the battles, because there isn't really like the, as you would remember with Fire Emblem games, there's the sword beats axe kind of thing. It's now more DPS, it's now more blocking, it's now more effectively using your moves to create the best outcome possible, because certain groups will not do as strongly. And you'll know it's the one little complaint that I kind of have is that almost instantly how you're going to do even before you fight. Because sometimes that can change, and it sometimes can be a little bit misleading, but you can literally walk into a battle starting with it, put your party members on the field, or put your different units on the field, and immediately select an enemy, and it'll say, oh, this person does this much, this person does this much, this person does this much, and you can just decide, how you want to set your structure. Do you want this guy to take care of that because they can one-shot him? Do you want this person to go whittle them down a little bit so the other ones can go in because they need more experience or whatever else? So in a way, it's a give and take. Like, it's really good for, as a tactician, going, okay, I'm going to set this piece here, you're going to go attack these, get rid of that off the field so we can actually charge into here. But on the flip side, it also means that there's not a lot of surprise to what happens. It's very rare that anything changes on the field. If you go and fight and nothing interrupts you, nothing will change. But there are things that can happen. Something else can get summoned on the field and mess with it. You can get into another fight beforehand. There are trebuchets and ballistas that will cause damage to units if they get too close. There are all these other like intangibles that could happen. There are also bosses will generally have abilities. There are some enemy types that will also have abilities that can translate into something against your unit, but generally most of those will mostly amount to, oh, so one of your units can't help with like healing from a distance, which can be useful, but most of the time isn't a deal breaker. It would take something pretty serious to do that. But there are attacks where like they'll put like a fire tornado that will deal repeated amounts of damage. That can really mess with things, but those don't happen nearly as often as they maybe could to really increase the difficulty. But for the most part, what I like about it is the way that the system is for actually moving your units around. And how that works is when you start on a map, you have essentially, you'll know immediately like all the units on the map. There are cases where like more will show up in story, but it's very rare. What'll happen is you will summon from your home base a maximum amount of, like, it'll say like usually off the bat I think it's like 3 units. Sometimes it'll be 4. It really depends on how big the field is. But you'll take your units. You start, I believe they start you at 2, or do they start you at 3? I think they might actually start you at 3 as the max, but you can get to 5 party members in a unit. So by the time the game ends, you'll have, if I'm right that it's 10 units, you'll have 50 different people that you'll have in these groups split among 10 units. There are more, so there are some that do sit in by the wayside. Most of them I was more than okay. They just didn't interest me at all. But say at the start of the battle, you throw 3 units on the field. You'll know right away, okay, here's a bunch of red units on the field. There will be, depending on how big the map is, there will be other areas with flags. Some are just literally just points to hold that. They're great for defense. But there are others where they're actual command posts where if you finish taking that over, you can now summon units to that area rather than having to summon them all the way back to your home base and go through the long journey. There are units like, say, ones on horses or dragons that can go a little bit faster, but generally speaking, you'll want to get command posts so that your foot soldiers can go much quicker to your objectives. And like Fire Emblem games that you would expect, the round ends when you take the big boss out that's on the main command post. So For the most part, it's relatively straightforward. Most units will have like a certain, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll kind of see it where there's a red ring surrounding them that basically defines like how far away they have to be before they will be able to do any range stuff. So like archers, mages, and healers, all of them are capable of helping in some way or another. Sometimes they actually are not helpful. There are cases, because again, it's all about that gambit system, where if you use an archer, maybe it actually messes with how the enemy composition is, and now your gambit system that you've created, I can't remember what they're called. I think it might just be called orders, but I can't remember. But the way that the attack structure works in the scripts that you write on these characters now changes. So maybe they don't do the attack that would have done more damage quickly and would have done more DPS overall. So you got to think about that sometimes. So it's not always beneficial to have an archer on the ready. Most of the time it's helpful to have a healer, but generally speaking, like you will want to do some sort of backup strategy. And for the most part, you'll just move people along the map. You'll want them to go after whatever unit they are and just kind of work your way through. As you get deeper into the game, there become other things. Like I said, there are trebuchets and ballistas that you want to focus on because they can really screw with your enemy or your allies. There sometimes may be these sort of prayer areas where they can give you bonuses. Like there's a healing rain that will, for that area that you put it on, will generate an HP buff for them again. There are places where they can push enemies away so they can kind of move them back or something. Sometimes they do damage. So there are a lot of different things you can do to kind of overall change the landscape of the map around you. But for the most part, the core of it is going to be your party members and the way that you deal with their actions. And they give you a massive number of people to work with and a massive number of classes. I honestly couldn't tell you classes that are the most important. They actually do have a system where you can go to a fort and create your own version of other units. So maybe you really want to have more wyvern riders because you really like having flying types. You can just make one because they'll only give you like one or two of these characters that actually have a name and have like voice acting and such, but you can just create more. In fact, I did that at the beginning for a Griffin rider because I had one temporarily, but in the story I didn't unlock her yet. But there was a place I really wanted to access, and like an idiot, I thought that meant I could change it on the map. So I created that character, and I never really ended up using her. But if you really are in need for more flying units, for example, and you really want to have somebody that can get over mountains and get to certain areas faster, you can do that. If you want to just have like a map, like especially with I'm sure speedrunners, if they really wanted to mess with it, if they weren't, because the game can be speed run in like 20 minutes. It's insane because you can go to the final mission almost immediately. You're probably going to get your ass kicked because they're level 60 and you start at not 60, but they're like GDQ. They had it recently and it was like 20 minutes. It's crazy. But like if you want to really mess with things and say, I want a unit that is all just like sword wielding knights on horses, you can do that, and you can name them however you want. By later on in the game, you'll be able to get items that can mess with color schemes. Although with the creative characters, you can just customize their colors right off the bat. But you can even mess with the characters that are recruitable. You can, if you want to change something up about them. And I did that with a few of them because I didn't quite like their designs, so I kind of tinkered with them. Sometimes it was like maybe I wanted a different hair color. Most of the time, I was messing with their outfit, because I didn't think the colors that they had maybe necessarily worked the way that I wanted them to. So almost like how fighting games have like alternate colorations for outfits, I kind of did that a little bit. But you have such infinite customization, and they give you a massive number of classes. And like I said, I couldn't really tell you if there's like a bunch of them that are the most effective. There are certain characters that I ended up using a lot more. For example, like a lot of my party leaders were either healers or mages, because they obviously could do more than just attack flat out. Like they could assist. My main party was being run by a mage, even though I was still using it for most of my close range battles. They were still there that if, somebody else was with them, that they could assist if, somebody came from behind them and whatever else. I just found like, I'd say like half of my party leaders had some way of dealing range, whether it was mages, healers, etc. So there was a lot of that. But in the end, like, I don't feel like there is necessarily classes that I would say are the most useful. There probably are. I mean, your main character's hero classes is obviously going to be pretty OP because it is the pro tag. But like, the only thing I could say is probably the most useful is healers and having people on wyverns or griffins or horses, because you want to have the ability to traverse the terrain as quickly as you can for in some scenarios, especially when someone manages to get around you and is going after your home base, because there are items that can send you back, but sometimes like you don't have any left, or you really just you don't want to waste it here, so you can just send somebody on horseback so they can get there real fast, because they'll clearly beat out the hulking, armor walkers that are over there. But like, the only thing I would say in terms of class types that aren't that great, I would say like towards the end of the game, there's a lot of characters that they add in that are not like, they're not bad, but by the time you get to the last 2 continents, because there are 5 in the entire game that you can traverse to, and you'll probably do them in order just because of level scaling. I mean, you could go and do them in different orders, just good luck getting past some of them at a low level, but by the time you get to the last 2, most of the enemies, or not the enemy, most of the allies you recruit are either similar to people that you've already really buffed up, or they're not quite as strong right out of the gate, so it's harder to justify pushing them to the front of the line. So I found myself towards the last like 20 hours not nearly as hyped about some of the new characters I'm recruiting, but I still found spots for different people because of what they offered. So, it's not like a case where by level 20, you've basically decided your entire army. Not the case. But you will be spending a lot more time by the end, more just tweaking what you're doing rather than completely rehashing and revamping everything. You're more just going to be just doing a few things to kind of just keep the DPS going a little bit stronger. Before I get to the story, the last thing I want to point out is the traversal in the game, like outside of battles. The overall map that they have is very copy and pasty, but thankfully it's not too over the top. There are obviously just items you can dig. There will be different enemies scattered across that. Actually, what I end up doing is I would go into areas that there were missions that I could do, but instead I would just keep going, because if I could still fight random, because there are like random encounters on the map, and if you beat them, you get a couple of renown points, which help you like upgrade your units, and by upgrade your units, I mean your size faster, and you can get more units, because you start with, I believe, 4 units and the max of 3. So you still have 6 you can unlock, and you still have to unlock all of them to have 5 members. So you'll want to generate renown as much as you can. So I found that just going and taking care of enemies just made it really easy to get that up faster. There are also, as you liberate more and more towns, there are these missions where they'll ask you to get materials that you'll either get through defeating enemies, through going through the overworld, or as you liberate more areas, you put a person in that town, and every battle you've complete, or every mission you complete, they will add more materials to your overall inventory, which makes getting these much faster. So it's helpful to liberate these towns as quickly as possible so you can just generate more and more stuff. That being said, there are also like these training missions you can do that you can just keep repeating. So you can also just keep doing them as you're leveling up your characters, and it will also get you more materials as well. And I found that that's basically what would happen is I would liberate a bunch of towns in that continent, and then as I started doing more level grinding for some of these characters, my inventory would start getting really boosted again, because all of these towns are now providing more materials, which makes it easier once you go to the next town to simply unlock that one, rinse and repeat. And by the time that I got to maybe 60, 70% the way through, I'd already done all I needed renown-wise that I needed to do. Everything was unlocked, and I'd done everything on that point, and then it was just a matter of getting through all the other missions and getting to the end. I full cleared the game. I actually did everything I possibly could. Anything on the map that was anything to do, whether it was a side mission, any sort of fetch quest, all that jam, did that. Every character was unlocked. There are some that you unlock in the post game. I haven't played a New Game Plus, so I haven't used those, but like I did everything that you could in a single run for the first time in that game. And after all this is done, like I said, it's an incredible game. And I do like what the battle system is my favorite. I had friends watching me play through Discord when I was going through it, and they were like, holy crap, like this is like what I wish tactics game were for the longest time. And it really adds upon the formula I think Fire Emblem has done well for so long. But what I honestly really think is its weak point is its story. I still think this is a 10 out of 10 game. By the way, spoiler, it's 10. But like the story has a few bits here and there, but the overall main narrative is mostly not interesting and not really cared about. Yes, the narrative is you get driven out of your kingdom, someone takes over, go get them back. It doesn't really come up that much. The main enemy you fight at the end isn't a factor except for like one story battle. That's it. For the most part, you're just doing a bunch of side stories. It feels realistic for what this kind of situation would be. You're not going to be constantly looking at the main antagonist the entire time. You're building an army to go attack them. But that being said, it causes this narrative to not necessarily be all that great long form, because it just ends up being a series of side stories relating to, you know, clearing the continent you're on or collecting more characters and allies, you know? It's not the strongest suit that it has. There are some storylines that are really, really well put together, but a lot of them are just, hey, this person's in this town and they're kind of being a dick. Go help liberate the town. And then they'll be like, wow, I'm sure sorry for what I did. And you'll be like, okay, cool. Join us because we're going to need the help. You can also execute them. I don't know why you would, because anytime you get that option, it's very obvious. Hey, do you want another person in your army so that you can keep adding people to this thing that you haven't maxed out yet? Or do you want to kill them? I mean, there was maybe one I have thought about it and then went, no, because I like your voice actor and I want to see what you are in my party afterwards. But like, it's one of the weird options that game does where it gives you the choice to either have them join you or kill them. And I'm like, as a player, unless you're doing this for like memes, why would you ever execute them? There's no real reason to do that. Because you, especially in the early game, you don't know how many people you're getting. So there's such a risk if you don't know how many members you're going to get by the end of the game. What if you kill enough of them that you don't have enough to max out everything? Like you only have enough for, say, 9 full units of 5. What are you going to do? So it's a weird thing. But the last thing I want to talk about, and the biggest one, and if you're watching on YouTube, you've seen a bunch of it, is its art style. And it's done by Vanillaware, who did Dragon's Crown, Grim Grimoire. And if you've heard of either of those games, you know how beautiful those games are. You also know how horny those games are, especially Dragon's Crown. Because this game decides that, hey, whatever fetish you got, they've probably got it for you. You're looking for some feminine guys, you're in. You got some jacked up guys, you're in. You're in for some cute, demure women, you're in for that. If you're in for some badass bitches, you're in. If you're in for a girl who is so goddamn batshit crazy she might slit your throat any second, yeah, you got that. If you want a 9-foot tall Amazonian woman so you can death my snoo your way through the rest of this run, you have it. Except you're going to have to complete a Coliseum all the way up to level 40, so you're going to have to wait a little bit longer for it, and I was very disappointed by that. But alas, all of that is there for you. And good lord, did I love a lot of characters, and did I have a lot of problems trying to figure out who my top 5 would be. And in the end, you know, there is like, I wouldn't call it a romance option, because there is a thing at the end of the game where it'll want you to pick a person and give them, I can't remember what the ring was called. But it was essentially like a wedding thing. The problem is you can also select guys, and they definitely don't lean into it being a marriage thing for all of them. In fact, there's a couple of people that you'd be like, I don't know if marriage would be good for this either. But at the end of the day, like, the dialogue themselves will kind of explain like whether or not it's kind of implied that there's a romance involved. Generally speaking, for almost all of the women, I think aside from like less than 5, I'd say like maybe 2 or 3, where it's obvious that there is no romanticism in it. It's just a like a friendship or a kinship. With some of the guys, you could make a case that there's a bit of love in there, but I think for the most part, like all the guys are more just we're chill, which I was a little disappointed by. I honestly was hoping that they would have the balls to go, hey, do you want to, as the prince, want to bang this fucking massive burly axe wielding like hunter guy? Even though, good lord, that's a hell of an interesting perspective to take. But like they don't. It's just more of like a friend thing, and it's kind of disappointing. But like, yeah, it does the shipping part not as good as Fire Emblem. If there's anything that Fire Emblem does better, it's the shipping. But then again, not a lot of games are going to be as good at that as Fire Emblem is. So let's be real with that. But I've gushed about this game long enough. If you are into strategy RPGs, like JRPGs, just to say, if you're a big Fire Emblem or a Final Fantasy Tactics or a Tactics Ogre guy, this is a must play. Not even close. If you're curious about these types of games, I honestly think this might be the best point now to enter into. It's not the easiest in comparison, but I think it does the best with what it has. And because the art style is just so goddamn beautiful that it makes it really easy on the eyes to just plow through it. And if you're really looking for a time sink, this also has it. Like I said, I 100%ed it and it was 80 hours. You can spend a lot of time in this game. So get on that. I can't suggest this game enough. 10 out of 10. My only thing I would tell people is, unless you're really trying to rush through it, go everywhere, and you don't have to go after every mission right away. Sometimes just exploring the map is better, so that way you get a few more items, you unlock a few more quests, you might find another character by accident. I found a character I should not have had for another 10 levels, and she was helping a lot in the early stages. So you can kind of supersede parts of the game that way, and it's great. I love it when games give you that perspective to just kind of be somewhere you're not supposed to and get some interesting stuff out of it. But yeah, that would just be my thing. Take your time with it, and just go and find excuse me, what works the best for you. There really isn't a right way to play Unicorn Overlord in terms of party composition. There are probably classes you should lean towards, like I said, healers and mages and such. But realistically, whatever gets the damage flow going for you, that's what works. Because it's never going to be the same for everybody else. There's no way that my party composition is going to be remotely the same to what everybody else did. So, absolutely, take a look at that if you're into that sort of thing. But enough about that. It's time to talk about the developer direct. So we had 4 games, if you don't count Ninja Gaiden Black 2 being re-released. But I gotta say, I don't know if I'm gonna love all 4 of these games, but I definitely will be trying them all at some point, considering they'll be on Game Pass. So we'll start in order. Ninja Gaiden 4 was the first announcement, which I didn't realize it had been 10 years since a mainline release had happened. I mean, obviously at the Game Awards, they did have that old school one. I can't remember what the full name was of it, but the 2D old school one was there. But now we have a proper 3D one in Ninja Gaiden 4 coming out, which is going to be very interesting. I'm very tentative, admittedly, with this one. It's not because I'm not interested in these types of games. I have a feeling that it's more going to be a case of, Ninja Gaiden games are very hard. And I've said many times on the show that, the Souls-like sort of games don't vibe with me as much. I still will absolutely try this game, and I think it still looks like a fun game. I think instead of the difficulty, what might actually make me a little hesitant in the end is the speed that these games have always been. An example of this is Ghost Runner. If y'all have played Ghost Runner, it's a very difficult game. But what to me honestly makes it the most difficult is just the sheer speed of everything. And Ninja Gaiden, I get the sense just from watching the gameplay that they showed, is that a lot of what was going to be playable in there is going to be very fast-paced. And especially because it's a Platinum Games production, because Team Ninja and Platinum are working together on this one. There's going to be a very big emphasis on just a lot of running around, a lot of heavy movement, and sometimes with those games I find that it's very difficult for me personally to stick with it, because I tend to be in the more of the kind of like, give me a small area, go nuts, and then I want to have a chance to just kind of mess around after that. Whereas these ones look very much more like you're constantly going to be on the go. The maps are going to be, you're going to constantly be moving around. There might be like bosses and stuff where there's a lot of that. And it's also the parrying and dodging stuff where it's much like Soulsborne games that I have a lot of trouble sticking with, because sometimes, man, I just want to power through it. And these are the kind of games where it's not just that. Now, I don't know if they're going to have like difficulty options that can change that. That's yet to be seen. I don't remember if they said anything about it in the developer direct. So but I would assume probably not, because that's the kind of games that Ninja Gaiden games are, is they're meant to be difficult. So it's the kind of game that I'm going to go into like hesitantly, and assuming I probably won't finish it, maybe not even play that much into it. But I will say I haven't gotten deep into a Ninja Gaiden game in a long, long time. I would say probably not since maybe the OGs. I can't even remember if I played Ninja Gaiden Black on the old Xbox. I can't remember. I might not have, actually. So it's definitely a game that I'm going to try, just on the perspective that I haven't gotten to before. So that's definitely on my radar. Would I say that it's a strong one on my radar? No. I would say at this point, that this, out of all the games that was shown off, this is the one that I'm the least interested in. And it's mostly just because, to be completely honest, I get the feeling that it's going to be more for the Soulsborne guys and not me, and those types of games generally have not jived with me, and I have a similar feeling that that's going to be the same case in this one as well. Now, it could change my perspective. I mean, there have been a lot of games that I didn't expect to be as good as they were. I mean, Indiana Jones, I thought I was done with Bethesda open world games, and here we are talking about it was one of my favorite games that I played last year. But I would assume, just on the basis of it being like the difficulty kind of game that it is, pretty good chance that it's gonna not be the case, but we'll see. Next up's gonna be South of Midnight. This one I would say is the next up on my intrigue list. A lot of it is the art style that's carrying it. I will say, similar to how the gameplay of Ninja Gaiden is making me a little hesitant, the gameplay of South of Midnight's also doing similar vibes for me. It's giving me, again, the third-person combat with dodging, and you want to do these different magic attacks to cover this, and you'll want to cleanse areas of... Like, it really does feel like another type of these sort of third-person exploration combat games. But again, the art style and its vibes are kind of what carry it. So maybe it has a better chance just because of how different it is in comparison. I will say the story trailer that they showed off did not impress me, because they gave the main character similar vibes to the main character Forspoken, which is not a good thing. I don't need a sassy teenage girl getting friggin' huffy over everything. It's not likable. I don't know why. Like, I don't know if South of Midnight's gonna stick with this the whole game through, but like, I don't for the life of me understand why the decision was made to make the main character Forspoken the most unlikable human being in the world. The idea of playing a game that is going to take any amount of time that's more than like an hour is that the person is likable. And my hope is that whatever they showed us is like the beginning and she gets the fuck over it later. But like, if that's the kind of character she's going to be the entire way through, of being this like, I'm independent and fuck everybody else who tries to give me any sort of advice sort of character, I don't know if I'm going to get along with that too well. And it's not a case of like, I know there's a lot of people that probably watch this and got the, oh my God, this is so woke stuff. It's really not this. Because I would be open if it would, because even though I'm obviously a leftist, I could say when something's getting too far into the, holy shit, guys, can we tone it the fuck down? This is more of a case of, the personality that they're giving this character, if it sticks all the way through, is not going to be an easy playthrough because I don't need to deal with a bitch the entire time. You know, I do like people to have at least something nice to talk about as the game progresses that isn't just, isn't it cool that they can do magic? Because that's not enough to me. I need to have, like, see their motivations being a little more interesting, and I need their personality to be something beyond just, you know, I'm teenaged angst. Because if I needed that, I'd go back to being 16, which I can't, so I'm not into that anymore. Maybe this isn't built for me either. That's always possible. But hey, I like playing video games, and I really want to try stuff that looks kind of cool. So I do want to take a look at it. But, like, from what I've seen so far, the combat, it just looks like every third-person combat game to me. It really, it looks like it's just Harry Potter with a Hogwarts Legacy with just a different art style. I don't know if I'm necessarily in for this. Now, if the story, because that's going to be the big thing. The story's going to have to do some heavy lifting too in this kind of thing. I've said it for a while. I really hope that third-person adventure games start understanding that you can't just be a good game anymore, because most of these games are 10 plus hours, and I will not play games that are that long if there isn't an engaging story with it. This is a game that I can tell you flat out, if the story doesn't hook me within the first 2 hours, I'm not continuing. You know, if I play through this game and the combat is okay and the story is very, very lackluster, I ain't touching this, because I ain't got time for this shit. I can play 1,000 indie games that can do this and better and actually have something interesting, because the writers actually wanted to make something that they thought people would think is interesting, and not just something that's being written, because a lot of AAA games are doing this now, where stories are being written as bare bones as possible because they think all we want to see is really good graphics and really good gameplay, and the gameplay is sometimes not exactly as good as they think it is either. So, but again, the art style is carrying it right now, and once it comes out, I believe in April, we'll see, and, you know, hopefully it's, I think it might be May. I might be mixing up my games, but either way, it's not that important. I think Kaylan might end up liking this if he liked, what was the game that he was talking about was almost his game of the year? Oh my god, why am I blanking on it? It was another, like, Souls-like game where you have, like, this fox thing where you fly in. It was like a not steampunk, but, like, I'm blanking on the name of it right now. He's probably cussing out if he ever listens to this show, but who knows. But, like, I think he would be super into this. Maybe the story won't carry it as strongly, we'll see, but this is a game that I'm very hesitant to as well. I am going to try it, but I have a feeling this might be a game that might not get its hooks in me right off the bat, and if it doesn't do that, then we're going to have a problem. Because these days, like, I mean, the amount of games that I finished last year, y'all know, because if you've been listening to every episode, you've seen how many reviews I did. I did a lot. And I ain't got time for a 10, 15, 20-hour experience where the story sucks and the gameplay is mid. So if the art style is all that's carrying it, we're not going to be doing this forever. So, moving on to Clair Obscure Expedition 33. This is the one that Chris and I were the most interested in initially when it was announced, because we're obviously big JRPG guys, and we want to see, you know, somebody that's not from Japan trying their hand at this stuff. I will say, from what they revealed in their video in the Developer Direct, I'm a little hesitant now in comparison. That's not necessarily for, like, a massive bad thing. There are just a couple of small things that made me go, are you maybe trying to do too much here? Because they showed a lot, and my problem is twofold. I wonder if their focus on the graphics side of it might lead to the overall depth of it to not be as strong. But on the flip side, they showed something in the video where they have, like, a staggeringly massive number of perks you can add to the character, to the point that, like, I looked at it and went, guys, that's too much. Because there was, like, a massive, like, even on screen, because I'm assuming they're scrolling to even go further, it looked like there was at minimum 30, 40 perks. And that could be things like damage output or resistances or things like that. I'm assuming. I'm trying to remember off of what I saw. But I looked at that and went, I don't think I'm going to care about this, and I'm just going to wait until somebody puts a tier list out and says, hey, these are the ones you want. Because as per usual, people are always going to optimize what the best stuff is. But like, I think conceptually is a really cool idea. The idea that it's a case where you're trying to take down this entity that is slowly killing off the entire human population year by year based on their age. And the sort of atmosphere that they've created, the backdrops, the sort of fantasy characters they've created. I think it's a really cool visual concept. What concerns me is going to be the combat. And what they showed doesn't necessarily make me like, I can't really say whether it's going to be good or bad at this point, because it kind of reminds me similar to like how a lot of the Xbox 360 JRPGs were, like your Lost Odysseys and such, where they're not bad, but they're not like super good either. It's a game that I could just be misreading. I think also I'm being very hesitant right now because I've had such a good start to the games that I've played. Granted, none of them are from this year, but like I'm hesitant right now just because anytime that I get too hyped up from what I see in a trailer, I end up playing the game and find out that, wow, this isn't as fleshed out as I thought. So I'm kind of trying to keep my expectations down a bit, especially this being a small studio that hasn't done something like this before. So it's very possible they might have gotten too ambitious, or they might have not done enough. And like I said, I think the focus of them saying we wanted to make something that was way more useful of modern technology, and that made me also go, turn-based RPGs generally don't do that, because the core of what makes a turn-based RPG good is its strategic and structure to its combat and its story. And the story, as I've seen in what they showed, I can't make heads or tails on what they've done. And the combat, I can't make heads or tails on what they've done. So I'm a little unsure about how this is going to go. I would say that it's still like the one I'm the most excited to play, but it's no longer the one that I am most confident is going to be really, really good. I could be wrong. I honestly want this to be my game of the year, because I would love for an Xbox game to knock it out of the park, and especially one that is a turn-based RPG, because Square Enix continues to need to eat crow. I'm glad that Metaphor won Best RPG against Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Square needs to understand that they don't rule the RPG market. And if somebody from a small studio on Xbox can beat them in making a better turn-based RPG, oh man, I would love to see the sore spot that hits in them. Because I want these guys to make the games that I remember playing. Because quite frankly, and I've bitched about it a bunch of times on the show, but Final Fantasy moving away from turn-based has killed it. I'll fight that to the end of the earth. I know there are people that like 15 and 16. I don't. And I don't understand why most people do either. And it's not even like a case of, I think you're wrong. It's just, I don't see what's good about it. Because every time I play them, I go, the combat isn't that fun to do, and the stories are god-awful. I haven't enjoyed, like I said it with 15. It's fine as a, like, best friends go on a road trip. But as an actual plot, it sucks. It sucks a lot. And 16, for as much as I played of it, I think I played about almost halfway, I don't give a shit about anything that happens in that game. All the characters suck, and the story has no progression to me. It's just, move on to another place, and oh look, it's dark too. Go fight some shit. Why the fuck should I care? Why should I care about all this stuff? The intrigue about Final Fantasy games like 6, for example, was, look at this cool town. Here's the problem that's going on in here. Go fix the problem. Or in 10, hey, here's this massive crazy enemy, that's destroying all these villages. So we're going on a pilgrimage to try to get the power together to do this. And also, hey, here's a fun aside. Go fucking play underwater soccer. There's nothing to offset those games. In the way that Persona does it effectively well, by having a mixture of its combat and the sort of social link system that it has, where it isn't just, a grind fest with a haphazard story. That being said, Persona stories are very relatable. Metaphor's story was very old school, but had very often a lot of moments in between that were really, really well put together. And the villain was a fucking phenomenal villain. Whereas Final Fantasy hasn't done that in a while. So like with Clair Obscur, what I hope to see from them is similar to what other games are doing now that aren't Final Fantasy, which is your combat is the star, but your story is what really pulls it all together. I want to see a villain that matters. Now, it may just, the way that the story goes makes you wonder if there's even a villain to look at until you get to the very end. I don't know. But like, my hope is that if that isn't there, that there's a bunch of stuff in between that really hits. Because again, a turn-based RPG, a combat can be really, really good for it, but if the story is below mid, it won't work. The story has to be at least okay. It has to be decent. Because if you're going to play a game that's as long as turn-based RPGs go, you got to give us something to keep up with. And if there's no motivation, it becomes, and this is an example that might tick some people off, but dot hack games. Because dot hack games have no good story to them for the most part, and they are just endless. Go to a new place, fight some shit, do it again. It's boring. So I really hope that they are able to get that trend going and really going. And on screen right now on YouTube, you can see all the perks that I mean. I look at all that and go, that's way too goddamn much. It's definitely a thing where I'm not going to tweak this as much as they think I might, and I'm just going to look at a tier list and see which one should I focus on the most. And that's probably going to be what I end up doing. But hopefully they're able to put this together into something that I really, really enjoy, because I really just want some more good turn-based RPGs, man. That's all I want. I just really want a much more cool shit to do, okay? That's it. I just want Final Fantasy to more Crow, all right? But we get to our main attraction, Doom: The Dark Ages. I fully admit that when it first got shown off, I didn't care. And that's because, quite frankly, Doom games, the current modern Doom games, just are too fast-paced for me. I've tried playing both Doom and Doom Eternal. It doesn't feel as good in my hands, and it may just be that I'm looking for a bit of slower combat. Well, I found out that that's what Doom: The Dark Ages is, because they're taking a more of a ground and just be powerful in a fucking tank sort of deal with it, because you have the shield, a lot of melee focus. There are obviously a lot of guns, but the idea now is you're a walking tank, whereas they said in Doom it was more like run and gun, and Doom Eternal was jump and shoot. So they've taken a much more grounded, literal approach to it, and that gets my interest. They also show that they have a difficulty set of sliders that make things a lot more interesting, including turning the game speed down, which actually would be huge for me. Because the problem with me for a while is that the game is just, it's too much going on too fast. Similar to Metal Hellsinger. I really like Metal Hellsinger, but it's too much too fast, and there's the rhythm elements to it. So it just ends up becoming like just an overload for me, and I'd rather slow it down. If I can do that in Doom: The Dark Ages, you have my undivided attention, because I like Doom games. Don't get me wrong. I really enjoy what the Doom games are now. And I love that, you know, there's something at Bethesda before Indiana Jones that was at least providing really good content. It was getting too over the top and too quick for my playstyles anymore. But if that's something I can change now, I'm definitely interested in this, because visually it's fucking incredible. We all know the soundtrack's badass as all hell. And the combat in this one continues to do what Doom combat does the best, which is rip and tear. And in this one, if I'm able to slow it down a little bit more, have it be much more being precise, being able to dodge and block and do everything that I need to with the saw shield. I can't remember I think that's what they called it. Can't remember. But like the fact that they're able to really make this a lot more approachable for different folks that are looking for different things. Because you can also make the game even faster too. I think the speed was like, the slider goes between 50 and 150%. So that's interesting. So if you really want to make it just crazy fast, you can do that too. But like, I think it's great what they're doing with this. Everything they showed off, I'm super interested in. The shield bashing, throwing it like your Captain fucking America, the different dodge and parry mechanics. I think they actually look really, really good. The weapons they showed off look fantastic. I cannot wait to grab a shield and that fucking like flail and just go mad with that. That looks like a lot of goddamn fun. If there's any game right now that I am the most interested in and probably the best chance of finishing, I'd say that's the one right now. It's funny how in order of how they show the games during the direct, that's the order of games that I think are the most likely for me to complete. And, the hope obviously is that all 4 of them are done. But I think Doom the Dark Ages does the most in that developer direct to really get me interested in it. Whereas Ninja Gaiden 4 is more like, oh, that's cool, they're bringing it back. South of Midnight was like, okay, again, the art style is really, really cool, but this just looks like a lot of games that I've played before. And Clair Obscur being, I don't know if you're doing things the right way that I would do for a turn-based, but it's a turn-based, so I'm still in. But Doom the Dark Ages went, nope, I am fucking playing that, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to have a blast with that now. Because I really did enjoy the little bit of time I put in Doom 2016, but I just couldn't finish it. And then Doom Eternal, the traversal was really bugging me. I couldn't get into it. I thought there was too much. So I think this is the best compromise for me. And I think that means it's got the best shot at being a game that I'm going to finish. So they did an impressive job. And these are all games, well, Ninja Gaiden 4 is coming out in the fall, but they did say that Ninja Gaiden Black 2 is being released the day that they announced it. But these other 3 games are coming out by May. So they've done a pretty good job of getting us ready for a couple of games in the spring. They didn't announce anything for March, so it's whatever is coming at this point is going to be April and May. It's going to be a nice busy stretch. I'm already going to be super crazy busy in February anyway, so the fact that they're not releasing any of these in March is good because that gives me time to finish a few things. There's going to be a Trails going to get to finish, and you know how long those go for. But they did a good job. I think they picked 4 games that were really worth looking at. And while there are some I'm more hesitant on, I'm planning on trying all of them because, again, Game Pass makes it really easy to make that call. Would I say that they're all going to be great? I think Ninja Gaiden 4 will be well received by those people. I think South of Midnight probably is going to get the lowest overall reviews unless I'm just way off base. Clair Obscur, I think, will be right around a similar thing because I think a lot of people are going to treat this up against some of the better JRPGs that are out there, and it's not going to compare as well. And then Doom the Dark Ages will probably easily be the best review one. Could be way off. If I had to guess right now, in terms of what I think is going to have the best Metacritic score by the end of the year, I would say, if you really got to put the gun to my head, South of Midnight will be 4. Clair Obscur will be 3. Ninja Gaiden 4 will be 2. And Doom the Dark Ages will be the highest rated. That would be my guess. But you guys, I've done enough talking here. You guys let me know. If you're on YouTube, obviously leave a comment. If you are listening to this on an AI platform and you want to talk to us, hey, like I said at the top of the show, linktree.ee/PixelPlay Podcast, where you can get a link to our Discord. You can come chat with us there and let us know what you think about the show. Let us know about what topics you want to hear from, or just shoot the shit. We're always down. Have at it there. Obviously, again, YouTube, like and subscribe. If you're listening on audio platform, if you can give us a rating, please do so. Share with all your friends. We are going to be doing another solo side quest. No quiz this time. I'm going to actually talk about cozy games because there was a Reuters article recently that came out that I saw and just want to kind of gush about some cozy games and just talk about that for a little bit. So I believe Chris will be back next week, so we'll at least have a non-solo lineup for next week's episode. So look forward to that. Again, as per usual, Wednesdays at noon for the main show, Fridays at noon for the side quest. So with that being said, take care. We will see you on the next one. Bye-bye for now.